Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this episode are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of USA Global TV and Radio. The content presented is for informational purposes only and is intended to foster open discussion and debate. Viewer discretion is advised. USA Global TV and Radio does not endorse any particular viewpoint and encourages viewers to seek out additional information and perspectives. Saving America with Dr. David D. Schein.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Welcome to Saving America. This is your host, Dr. David D. Schein. Women are tougher than men, and that's for real. Men play football and rugby. They are usually bigger, cut down trees, and generally act all macho. In my observation, not one of them could go through childbirth a second time if they even went through that pain the first time. And yet some women do it with impunity. The modern woman breastfeeds her baby only a few weeks after the miracle birth and then walks into the boardroom, a sales meeting, appears before the cameras looking like $1 million, or into a classroom. Guys would still be laying in a hospital bed at that point. Erika Kirk, the widow of the slain conservative activist Charlie Kirk, vowed in a primetime address only 2 days after her husband was assassinated, quote, "The evildoers responsible for my husband's assassination have no idea what they have done. They killed Charlie because he preached a message of patriotism, faith, and of God's merciful love," she said. "They should all know this. If you thought that my husband's mission was powerful before, you have no idea. You have no idea what you have just unleashed across the entire country in this world." My wonderful audience, I know that I could not do what she did if my better half was taken from me, and especially not in the brutal attack that took Charlie from her and the world. I watched most of her address live and just marveled at this illustration of resilience at the highest level. Her prediction above was right, as there has been a surge in requests for new chapters across the country since Charlie's brutal and untimely death. The far left has continued on its self-destructive path of violence and supporting criminals, not society. About a week after Charlie's death, the Turning Point Board unanimously made Erika the new CEO. Sadly, as rational people try to move past this tragedy, false information has been spread. The most egregious of this, perhaps, was that some claims from the left that Charlie was killed by a MAGA person, in other words, a Trump supporter. Tracking the sad history of the accused killer here, he is from a conservative family. Apparently, he was in that camp in the past. According to reports, his mother said that he had moved far left in the last year or two. The etchings on the rounds in the rifle and his other actions related to the assassination are consistent with that left position. While hard to form a direct connection, the report said he was involved in a relationship with his roommate, reportedly a male transitioning to a female, may have had an impact. A statement by Jimmy Kimmel that got his show suspended was along the lines of the less false narrative above. I note that the left wants to hammer the Trump administration, FCC, for Kimmel being suddenly suspended. However, my understanding is that it was about the money. Money caused Stephen Colbert to be canceled at the end of his current season, the network itself reporting losses in the tens of millions of dollars over at CBS. My understanding is that two major broadcast companies, Nexstar and Sinclair, each holding multiple ABC station licenses, announced that they would no longer air the Kimmel Show. That makes it about money since fewer stations airing a network show means lower advertising revenues. I tried to find reports on whether the Kimmel Show was profitable or not. ABC has apparently not posted that. However, a source called Late Nighter reported that 3 live host late night shows on CBS, NBC, and ABC have lost 70 to 80% of their viewership. Other data indicated that Kimmel's show had dropped like a rock in the 18 to 49-year-old demographic, apparently a target for a lot of advertisers. Regarding the censorship, having been censored from time to time on social media myself, it is something I hate. I don't think the Disney company, which owns ABC Network, considers their move censorship. They still lean left as far as I can tell. Otherwise, they would not air that miserable show, The View. They tolerate various liberal hosts on weekend so-called news shows. So money is the driver, not necessarily politics. United Kingdom in free fall. Is there hope for a turnaround? In the shadow of the pomp and circumstance of President Trump's royal reception in London, there is a real concern for the social context of this important American ally. That reportedly has confirmed its commitment to working with the U.S. on security and industry. There is no other country in the world with which we share such a closer bond. Behind the curtains, or maybe not so much behind the curtains, there are frequent reports of girls and even boys being raped, that there is little punishment for the perpetrators, that there is immigration situations starting to look like the Biden-Harris mess in the U.S. over the prior 4 years. Naturally, the official government position looked quite reasonable during the business part of Trump's visit with Prime Minister Keir Starmer. However, that cannot be reconciled with a comedian arrested at London's Heathrow Airport by 5 policemen with guns. This was reported by Graham Linham, who claimed in a Substack post that this happened to him. His offense was not murder or rape, but 3 reported jokes about trans individuals. Note that in London, police do not carry guns routinely. Further, it would seem it would be pretty safe to pick up a guy coming off an international flight. Doubt he was carrying a weapon. Apparently, this was not an isolated incident. The situation in the UK is so out of control that there was a mass protest called Unite the Kingdom shortly before President Trump's recent visit. This was led by a conservative activist who goes by the name Tommy Robinson. Police reports are that about 110,000 protesters showed up. There was a counter-protest that reportedly drew about 5,000 people. Robinson was calling for free speech and defending British heritage and culture. Some of his supporters carried the St. George's red and white flag of England and the Union Jack, the state flag of the United Kingdom. Some also called for honoring the late Charlie Kirk. I, for one, would not feel safe visiting the UK at this time. I hope there will be a return to rationality soon. Some conservative pundits here in the US have already described UK and parts of Europe as gone, meaning that they've lost their national identity. I do believe that there will be a strong swing in the other direction, parallel to what we've seen here with the Trump administration sweeping in behind the failed Biden-Harris administration. The recent protest is just a sign of things to come. Jobs number restatement, just tip of the iceberg. By now, most have heard that the U.S. added 818,000 fewer jobs than previously thought in the period from March 2023 to March 2024. Given the sheer size and expense of our federal government, this is totally inexcusable. It is interesting since President Trump drew criticism for firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics in August when there was a question about the June to July labor stats. Maybe he knew this was going to get worse. From a political view, it may indicate that the jobs numbers in the critical period of the 2024 presidential election may have been fudged to help the Biden-Harris administration not look so bad. The restatement means that the administration basically added no jobs despite Biden's mindless bragging before he dropped out of the race. The poor jobs report, paired with a tiny number reported for August, may have a silver lining in that the Fed finally dropped its key interest rate a measly quarter point. The market had already priced this drop in. Numerous pundits believe there will be 1 or 2 more quarter point drops before the end of this year. We'll have to see. The Fed's action alone is unlikely to boost the struggling U.S. housing market. Economists still claim they do not expect a recession in the U.S. this year. My concern is if the federal bureaucracy cannot be trusted on the simple labor number, what other key numbers are being distorted against the interests of the American taxpayers, paired with increasing distrust of other agencies like Health and Human Services making announcements on vaccines. Just who can we Americans trust to tell people the truth? While the unemployment rate continues low, the reports that I'm getting is that the current hiring is pretty lousy right now. If you do not have a job right now and you're job hunting, I think you just might argue that there is a recession going on. Other data indicate that recent college grads are having a really tough time in the cloudy job market, as another example. Two well-known retail chains are on my radar for this week. The Gap has closed 80% of its stores over the last 5 years or so, from about 2,500 to a little less than 500. The advantage the holding company has is that it can focus on two other brands, Old Navy and Athleta. This also signals major retail shifts like away from malls toward big box operations like Walmart and, of course, online purchasing from many sources, including Amazon. Another cutback, but not so drastic, is United Colors of Benetton. Reports are it has an amazing 3,000 stores globally, but plans hundreds of those locations to close soon. They're going to accelerate online sales in the United States. This is part of a major refocusing, which I believe pairs well with the Gap stores report above.
All rise.
Our series Interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I am sure that you will agree that he deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Kino Isaac, whose motto is, don't chase fame or money, chase purpose. Kino recently interviewed with me for his podcast, and I thought our Saving America audience would like to meet him. He lives in beautiful Johannesburg, South Africa. He's a musician and music producer, works with a variety of artists. Instead of focusing solely on fame or money, Kino has prior to establishing long-term relationships with independent artists and labels, providing valuable services to independent music businesses. By creating consulting, production, distribution, publishing, branding, artist development, mixing, and engineering, plus sound ID into a business model, Kino has not only focused on his own internal projects, but assists many independent artists and labels in the overcrowded industry. His approach emphasizes collaboration, which is critical in the new era of the music business. We welcome Kino Isaac for his first appearance on Saving America.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be on Saving America, a country that I am so highly passionate about.
Well, we'll look forward to your coming over to visit. As you know, I say unfortunately, I visited your beautiful country several years ago, but it was before you and I had been introduced. And I can tell you that, when I say it's beautiful in Johannesburg, I say that from personal observation. Spent several days there, and it's a great place. So let's talk about your business, however. At what point in your life did you decide to focus on the music business, and did you start as a musician?
Wow. To answer that question, I got to take a quick deep dive into my own personal life growing up. Music has always played a role in my life growing up. It was one thing like I could always relate to, like it became, part of who I was. I prioritized it. Nothing else mattered to me. I was the type of guy that should go to school, and as soon as you got home, you wasn't focused on doing homework like I was on the PC, already mixing up tracks or listening to music. And that's just how my daily life was. A turning point for me where I realized, this is something I want to do for the rest of my life. Or like I really never knew it quite yet, at a young age, that I would convert something I enjoyed and a passion into a full-time career. But I walked into a music store once. Those days, we still had physical music stores. In the States, I'm sure you still get it. In South Africa, it's outdated now that we're living in the streaming era. But a popular store in South Africa was called Musica, and you should go into the store, you should pick out a CD, you had booth. You could go and you could listen, you could jam to the tunes. And I walked into the store and I was with my mother, and she offered me the opportunity to pick a CD as a gift, growing up in the CD era. Um, and I came across an artist who is well known, Eminem. And I did not know who Eminem was at the time, but something made me pick up the CD. I jumped into the booth, I listened to it, and the lyrics, the emotion behind it just hit me. And I could relate to that at that age, emotionally, what I was, and psychologically, what I was going through. And I became a fan from Eminem from that time. For the audience, it was the Marshall Mathers LP. It was released in 2000. The best investment I ever made with my life, no matter what the critics may say. I mean, my mother was skeptical about it, given the lyrics, within the music itself. But I could relate to him. I could understand, and it's that type of music, that I ended up wanting to produce in my own career when that evolved. And I also got involved with the 90s music scene. Not being familiar with it, but getting involved with Eminem, it led me to getting to know his producer at the time, who was Dr. Dre. And then I started looking into the history of Dr. Dre and Death Row Records and Suge Knight, also a lot of criticism around that. But learning about them started to educate me at a young age about how the music business actually works. Like we always see, the top of the iceberg. We see
Yes.
the crowds, we see the atmosphere, we see the artists, but we never know or really understand the hard work behind the scenes and what happens behind the scenes and how the business side of it actually works. That's why I say there's a huge difference between the music industry and the music business. Being in the music industry is being the DJ, being the artist, performing for the crowd out there. Being in the music business is being an entrepreneur in the music business. So at a young age, started to learn, okay, how it actually all works, the foundation of it. Of course, now in 2025, we're living in a completely different era. The industry is evolving, so it doesn't work the same anymore. But those same foundations still play a role in this day and age. So as I started to grow older, I always knew that somewhere down the line, I was going to get involved in the industry. I am a professional club DJ as well. That's how it started off for me. Being on the business side of stuff, I didn't want to be just a DJ. I also wanted to work on the business end of stuff. So I also started doing my own events as well. So then I could also manage DJs in the process. So besides being a DJ performing at the events myself, I was also managing the events and managing the DJs. And that's how it actually all started for me to build what I have created today, if that does answer your question. I did
Absolutely.
get
And
caught up in this. I just want to add one more thing. I was caught up in the system. I was always the outsider to the outside world, whether it be family, whether it be friends, whether it be my teachers at school. I should always think, differently. Like things didn't make sense to me, but music always made sense to me. The entertainment industry always made sense to me. So it was kind of hard to explain to people that, look, I want to be a professional DJ. And they'll be like, but what is that? Is that a career? Can you make something out of that? Or I'm a music producer. Is that a real thing? It's because we're so brainwashed in the system of, go to school, go to college, get a job, and then that's your life for, eternity until you pass away, until you leave us from this realm. But for me, it was like, nah, I want to be involved in it. So I was caught up in the system for quite some time. I had a day-to-day job, and then I was doing my events and DJing 50%. Production, came at a later stage in my life. Not too late. It was still in my mid-20s. And then one day I decided that, look, I want to jump into this full time. I'm jumping over this cliff and I'm going to see what happens next. And from that day till now, I haven't turned back. It hasn't been an easy journey. The world is changing. I see a lot of changes globally happening, and it's affecting the entertainment industry as well. The independent space is growing, which is great, with the position and I am in it, at the moment. All the red tape is slowly getting moved away. So there's pros and cons when it comes to the industry at the moment. But I do hope I've answered your
Absolutely.
question.
Yeah. And I did want to ask you to share with our audience some of the performers that you've helped, and where can our audience hear some of the music that you are helping produce today?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. You've begun working with performers, helping them to produce records and to get their music out. How can
Yes.
our audience name some of the performers you're working with, and how can their music be found?
Okay, I'm going to take another deep dive into the history of my own career. So, because I always wanted to do things differently, there was a lot of nepotism in the business itself. There was, a good percentage that were favorites, and where hidden talent didn't know how to navigate the industry, and I was one of them. So, building my own career within the industry, I saw the corruption that was going on in it and the nepotism that was happening. And I saw opportunity being given to a certain percentage of people where hidden talent wasn't, no matter how many times they tried. And I should always see, even locally within South Africa, um, certain people getting to global stages, and then I'm like thinking to myself, okay, but I got the same abilities and skills to also be on those same stages. Why am I not there? So I had to build myself up the hard way, which is why I focus so much on the business end, because I knew how to actually, okay, put my own event together, perform at my own event with the DJs that I bring on board, DJs that nobody really know about, and still make good revenue out of it, instead of, like, I'm going to phrase it this way, kissing ass, to someone to perform on a global stage where you still never get there. And because it was based on, who I'm going to choose. So when it comes to the artists that I have worked with, there's several artists, independent artists that I am working with, have worked with within South Africa. But I needed to do something different, because in a crowded market at the moment, if you're an independent artist and you release a track, you put it onto Spotify, you're putting it on to the biggest musical warehouse in the world, or Apple iTunes, and your music is just going to go on to shelf 12B, it's going to remain there. Now, artists don't know they still need to market and brand themselves to actually get an audience to the track itself. And that can take a lot of time. That's where a lot of brand building actually comes in. Like, you need to build a brand simultaneously while still producing music. Like, artists just want to jump into the studio. They want to do all the fun stuff, with their homies, and they want to get a track out there. But 2 months down the line, they start to realize, okay, we've got the track out there, but we're not really sustaining ourselves financially now with that track. So I decided, okay, what can I do to change that, to, speed things up? And then I started to build a global community, and this started throughout the COVID period. And that's the importance of networking. And artists don't understand how important networking is, not even in the entertainment industry, in any industry. You, as an entrepreneur yourself, you should know how important networking actually is. So during the COVID period, I started to network. I started to get involved with coaches. And one of the coaches I came across on social media was Rick Barker. And he was the first manager for Taylor Swift. So after he stepped away from management, he started his own coaching agency. So I got involved with him, and I started learning from him, marketing strategies, branding. And then I thought to myself, okay, all this knowledge that I'm getting, I'm going to filter it down to the independent artists. And the crazy thing about networking and being consistent with your career is that one network can lead to someone else, and someone else can lead to someone else. And from Rick Barker, it led me to Clinton Sparks, who's also known worldwide. He's also worked with global artists worldwide, and he does a lot of coaching as well. It led me to joining his network. From that network, it led me to another network of global producers who could get now licensing deals from mainstream artists such as Rick Ross, Dizzy Wright, Lil Wayne, Sean Kingston, Snoop Dogg, Bizarre from D12, which is Eminem's group. It's crazy, eh? It's crazy how Eminem, transformed my whole life, and then I end up getting an opportunity to have, someone associated with him on one of my tracks. So this became an opportunity for us globally with this network that I have in the independent space. So ideally, what happens with this network is the beat is composed with a licensing deal with this mainstream artist, can be a 16-bar verse. That comes over back to me. I now go into what we call in South Africa the townships, where hidden talent, has tremendous talent but lacking resources, such as having sufficient network, data to, get themselves educated on how the industry works. And I pull them out and I get them onto the track. So with that leverage, being on the track with Rick Ross now, they can now leverage that track to build their career. So now when across this artist, which is going to work better for you as an artist now. If someone comes across you and it's just Kino Isaac on a track, the chances of me listening to Kino Isaac or looking into Kino Isaac is quite slim. But now if I see Kino Isaac featuring Rick Ross or Kino Isaac featuring Lil Wayne, I'm going to be like, whoa, let me check this out. Because now I'm leveraging the brand that they have already created. So that's what I'm currently doing now with independent artists, is I'm giving them that opportunity to feature on a track with a mainstream artist. When the track is out there, my work is done. Now the artist can take that track and now start looking for opportunities for them, whether it be getting endorsement deals, merchandising deals. If they're still keen on looking for a 360 record label deal, which is fading away in this new era that we are living in now, the mainstream labels, are focused on the 1% that they got working for them. It's enough. It's highly impossible now to get a 360 record label deal. But if you're still looking for a record label deal and you have been featured on a track with the mainstream artist, the chances of getting that meeting with the CEO of that company is very likely than just standing a standard demo like how it worked 20 years ago. So that's what I'm kind of doing now with independent artists.
It's a pretty interesting path. Now, your website indicates your focus on dopeness. Please explain to our audience what that means and how that's applied to your industry, because we don't usually like dopey people. So I had to ask that.
This is the second time in 2 weeks I was asked a question. Kino, explain to me what dopeness means. What does it mean when you say you're creating dopeness? To sum it up, creating dopeness is not following a trend, but creating a new trend. So I'm going to rewind to what I said I'm doing for independent artists in the lower income communities within South Africa. But keep in mind, this is global. This is happening global with the network that I've built in the United States. What I'm doing here, someone else is doing in another country. They may not be doing it at the scale I am doing it at. They may just be an artist and they just leverage that opportunity with licensing a verse from a mainstream artist for their own career, where I've decided to create a consulting agency, combined with my record label to offer these opportunities to artists. So creating dopeness is creating a trend. So I take, how I'm going to answer this exactly how I answered this last week. I take an artist from a lower income community. I put them on a track with Sean Kingston. That track gets released and now is played to this community. I have changed the whole mindset of that community in thinking now this is actually possible. I'm transforming culture. Now culture is thinking, right? In that present moment in time. And that's what creating dopeness is. How creating dopeness is creating something that has never been created before in a community, in a country, in the industry. That sums up creating dopeness, creating a trend, because it doesn't only change, the future for that artist. I'm not in the business of creating futures, sustainable futures for artists. But the moment that artist shines now appearing on a track with a global artist, the whole mindset of that whole community changes, as in, whoa, this was never done before. We never know this something like this could ever happen, or we could be part of the community of that artist that is actually on that track. Their whole mindset changes. Now nothing seems impossible to them. Now we can start climbing the ladder. Now we can start educating ourselves. Now we know that nothing is impossible. And that's what creating dopeness is. It's creating trends, not following trends. It's creating something that's never been done before.
It sounds fascinating to me, and so glad we got a chance to revisit. So how can our audience get more information about you and all the work that you're doing?
Well, when it comes to social media, my main platforms is Facebook. My creator account is Krimesh Kino Isaac. Well, if you just search Kino Isaac, it's going to pop up. Instagram, the same, at Kino Isaac. Kino Isaac Consulting Agency, that page is also available on Facebook. There is the website also, Kino Isaac Consulting Agency, but it's under the umbrella of Posh Magosh Group. So to search for it, you'll actually have to poshmagoshgroup.co.za/Kino Isaac, and then you'll get to the Kino Isaac Consulting Agency page. I'm also on SoundBed. Search for Kino Isaac if you want to contact me there. You can also contact me via email, which is kino.isaac@poshmagoshgroup.co.za. Yeah, that's my main source of where you can inbox me. You can DM me like on any platform. I am on LinkedIn as well. I don't post as much on LinkedIn as much as I would like to. But when it comes to, say, a reel, for example, or something that I feel that will reach an audience on LinkedIn, I will post there. But you can also search for Kino Isaac on LinkedIn. Or you could just go on Google. Something amazing happened yesterday. So I'm in contact with an illustrator that's also based in the US. So I actually met her on one of another podcast that I co-host, which is called Talking Back to Suicide. And she's written a book, and she does a lot of poetry. She does a lot of art. Now she wants to convert all that art, those poems, illustrations, into music. So we decided to keep the conversation going, after interviewing her on Talking Back to Suicide. And she's going to be a guest on my podcast next week, Friday. But she also reached out to me to ask me if I could assist her, with transforming her art now into music, because she wants to reach, a larger audience to fight and combat mental illness. So I'm like, okay, cool. And then she sent me an email yesterday saying, Kino, I went on to Google and I searched Kino Isaac, and I was reading all this cool stuff about you and what you're doing for the community. And she was totally impressed about it, So I'm like, okay. So that's the power of building a solid brand online. So for the listeners, if you just go on to Google and you just Google Kino Isaac, my Google profile is there, it's going to pop up on front, as a musical artist first. But as you continue to scroll down, you're going to come across my social media accounts, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, SoundBetter. You're going to check all that out. And then you can just send me a message and you can reach out to me. Like, I am open to working with artists or anyone within the creative space. First, it was when you go onto my website, first it started off as music business consultant. Now I've changed it to creative business consultant, because as I started to, get more involved in the creative space, having the pleasure of interviewing you as an author, I realized for myself that the gap isn't too wide between the music industry and between the writing community, and also being an illustrator or a drawer or a graphics designer. So now I'm branching out where I want to work with different diverse types of creatives out there. So for an illustrator now who wants to convert their poems and illustration into musical compositions, I'm like, okay, this is another opportunity now to grow my brand and to grow the agency and to help another creative out there. So I want to work with more people, internationally. Like I mentioned on my podcast when I was interviewing you, bulk of my work has been involved in the US. And, my main message, to third world countries at the moment, me, living in one, if I could build a network overseas and meet more dope people, who are also changing trends, developing culture, you can as well. And if you want a starting point, reach out to me. Let's discuss it. One of the questions also I got asked on another interview was, what makes me different to just going on to Sound Better and hiring a music producer? So I've written a poem or I've got lyrics and now I need someone to put a beat together for me. Now you can go on to Sound Better and you can get a good producer who's going to charge you $500 to $1,000 just to put that beat together. Whereas with the Kino Isaac Consulting Agency, you're paying less than that. And not only are we going to get your music out there, as in composing the beat, but we're also going to educate you on the music business itself. So I've built a network internationally that involves psychologists, because psychology plays a huge role in developing an artist. That's the starting point. We also got entertainment attorneys. Like, I've interviewed entertainment attorneys who've come on to my podcast, and we started building a relationship where, like, look, if any one of your artists needs anything further and above than what you can provide them, I offer consulting services for free. So that's all part of the network. So you're getting all that in a combined package. But just to
we're
reach
going to
out
have
to
to
me,
wrap it at that point because we have certain time limitations here. But it has been great having you visit with us, Kino. Again, it's our second time getting together.
Please proceed.
About 15 years ago, I was a periodic customer, but even then I could tell the Rite Aid operation was struggling. The chain, after some downsizing, emerged from bankruptcy, but has returned to bankruptcy as things appear to have continued downhill. Latest reports that it is trying to keep some of its current stores open in order to sell them. In my limited contact with Rite Aid, it never seemed to be quite up to par with Walgreens and CVS, the two giant drugstore chains. We recently reported that Walgreens had been acquired and would be going through some business changes of its own. Some local Walgreens locations have closed. Competition is tough with big retailers like Walmart, Sam's Club, and Costco. In addition, it seems that most large supermarkets also have a pharmacy operation. This is Dr. David D. Schein for Saving America. Please subscribe on your favorite platform.
Objection, Your Honor.
And a bit of good political news. Senate Republicans confirmed 48 Trump nominees. Finally, the long jam has been broken. Traditionally, the party that is not in power in the Senate goes along with all but the most controversial picks for appointments by the current president. Of course, Chucky Schumer has been following the current Dem playbook to hurt everyday Americans just to block everything that Trump does. Well, he was outmaneuvered this time as the GOP-controlled Senate changed the rules to get things rolling. The Dems did this to help former President Obama about a decade ago. So a simple majority, not 60 votes, is required in the Senate right now for confirmation.
Silence in the court.
The genetic answer to rare diseases. For over a decade, I've been predicting that science would come up with an approach that will pair specific DNA from a patient's disease with unique formula to cure that disease. We're not all the way there, but we humans are getting closer. I'm an alumnus of the University of Pennsylvania. I saw a recent report in their alumni magazine. I also saw a report from a recent Wall Street Journal article. For media purposes, I will hit some encouraging high points because there's lots of detail we don't need at the moment. The company is called GeneDx, and the company screens babies for DNA mutations that cause treatable disorders. The article describes a baby born in August 2024 with carbamoyl phosphate synthase 1 deficiency, a genetic disorder that afflicts about 1 in 1.3 million newborns. My understanding is that the result of this very rare disorder is incredible. Early death, and those who few survive rarely live very long, and it's pretty awful, generally blind, etc. However, with advances in something called gene sequencing, doctors at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia and the University of Pennsylvania's Medical School custom designed a substitute gene that was delivered to the baby's liver. The baby is doing great a year later. This type of advance is critical since mass medications are not financially practical for rare diseases. So custom remedies like this promise a better future for many. The idea is that there would be routine DNA screening of babies. There would be soon to be routine analysis of genes to see if there are hidden diseases. So common congenital disorders such as cystic fibrosis and sickle cell disease might be cured in infancy. In fact, the reports are that GeneDx can diagnose more than 4,800 disorders caused by genetic mutations that either inherited from parents or arise spontaneously. This would provide a better and longer life for many while reducing the high burden on the healthcare system for years to come. A bit of good news and maybe even more good news in the future.
May I remind you, you're still under oath.
Our series of interviews for Saving America establishes that the world is full of interesting people. Once you hear from our next guest, I'm sure that you will agree that she deserves the moniker of interesting person. Saving America welcomes Tracy Cramp-Perkins, who is an award-winning author, a 4-time dementia caregiving survivor with 16 years of experience caring for 4 family members with various dementias and other illnesses. It is her mission to supply caregivers with the proven shortcuts to reduce the stresses of dementia care. Tracy teaches hands-on solutions for reducing repetitive questions, meltdowns, and wandering. She includes tips using simple, inexpensive fixes found at hardware and office supply stores. Tracy holds a Bachelor of Science from Central Washington University. She worked her way through college with a variety of positions. For the last 18 years, Tracy has been a managing partner at Perkins Power Products, a manufacturer's representative agency serving the industrial electrical industry in the Pacific Northwest. Prior to forming Perkins Power, for 11 years, she worked her way up the ranks from the laboratory administrative assistant to the regional laboratory director for Bureau Veritas, Industries and Facilities Division in Seattle, Washington. She is the author of Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After, and is the host of the Dementia Home Care Show on the USA Global TV and Radio Network, one of our networks for this show, Saving America. We welcome Tracy Cramp-Perkins for her first appearance on Saving America.
Thank you very much for such a wonderful introduction, Dr. Dave. I really appreciate that.
Hey, we want people to know what a super person you are. As you know, we asked 3 formatted questions based on our research. And our first question is, your book covers so many topics. Why is it important to have such a resource when dealing with a person with dementia?
Well, no one is born knowing how to care for someone with dementia. And with most of us, we don't even know what to do or recognize what dementia is until it's well into the disease. And by that time, there's not a lot of support tools advertised out there that is really in general knowledge. And what happened with my family and me is I got a panic phone call from my younger sister. She said that my dad was unconscious on the floor of his living room. And when he woke up a week later in the hospital, he was diagnosed with moderate Alzheimer's disease. So it really caught us off guard. And because we didn't have all the paperwork in place properly, I didn't have the right power of attorney to take him out of the hospital, and they refused to let me take him home. He ended up on a 6-month journey going from facility to facility with the dementia without them allowing us to bring him home. And he knew that he was more advanced than what was going on around him, that he could still figure things out. And so he would figure out how to escape. And from each facility, he escaped 5 times because he's a very, very intelligent man. And on the 5th escape, they would eject him. There was one point, or I should let me back up. They were giving him medications to make him more compliant. Each time he would go to a new facility, they give him a different medication, but they never took him off any of the previous medications. So at one point, he actually threatened to kill his roommate because he had a hallucination that his roommate, who was bedridden, was threatening him. And so that landed him in a geriatric psych hospital. And because we, as the family, didn't understand what was going on around us, we got rather aggressive with the people that were caring for him because we didn't understand how hard it was for them. We didn't have any compassion because we had no understanding. And so they refused to tell us where he was sent. And so we ended up spending 4 hours calling every hospital in 3 counties until we found him. And so we had, like I said, a 6-month journey. He ended up going to 5 additional facilities and 1 more trip to the geriatric psych ward before we could bring him home. So we got a trial by fire in learning how to navigate the medical system, how to navigate the legal system, because we had to get the power of attorney, and we shortcutted it. Most people can't get it that fast. 6 months is incredibly quick through the legal system. It's just lucky I am local to where my dad was. People knew him, they felt bad, and they helped him. So that part was very helpful. And I can't say that will happen for everybody, but every time I failed while I was caregiving, it took the book you're seeing behind me, it took me, that's the 25% that worked, because the 75% that went up in flames, that didn't make it into the book. And I covered every single step for every failure I went through. And some of the things I didn't even go through, like elder abuse, but it was an important topic to cover. So there's a lot of things in the book.
That's pretty amazing. And I assume there's a little footnote here for all of us that the time to do those power of attorneys and wills and no recourse paperwork is while you've still got all of your faculties.
Yes. And the other part to that is, let's talk about fear, because fear is false evidence appearing real. And people keep putting it off thinking, oh, this will never happen to me. Thinking that if they put it off, then they can avoid it entirely. And what that does is that ends up with whoever is left behind, whoever is taking care of your legal work later, has to straighten all this out. And if they don't have the legal documents in place, it makes it very, very difficult for your family members or loved ones to carry out your wishes. And if they don't know your wishes, they can't honor them.
Absolutely. Very well said. And then our second question was, have you found that some persons with dementia simply cannot be taken care of at home and must be institutionalized?
Yes, and there's several different reasons this can happen. One of them is if the care partner, let's say it's been a couple that's been married 58 years, and the care partner dies, then the only place they can go is to be institutionalized. If they have a health issue that is beyond somebody's ability to care for them, they could end up being institutionalized. So there's several different routes to end up having somebody in a skilled care facility because they need the extra help. And it isn't a failure on the part of the caregiver. It's too much for the caregiver to take care of themselves. Because again, we're not born knowing how to be dementia care providers. We're not born being medical practitioners. You learn by failure. You learn by step trying to get through it.
And in those cases, one of the things that kind of cursed me anytime I see the word institutionalized, and I was thinking about your 6-month struggle, is what did the medical bills look like?
Well, that was a very interesting question that you asked, because my mom had cancer. Before she died, they hit the insurance ceilings. This was before Obamacare. And so they lost everything. They lost their home, all their life savings, everything, to paying off the bills for that. My dad ended up, by the time he was in the hospital, in Medicaid. And so he had Medicaid and Medicare. So that, and my sister's grand skill of getting grants, we were able to cover all of their expenses. Otherwise, we couldn't have. And today, it's really wonderful. Today, there are more people giving grants to help people with care, including places like, Hilarity for Charity. They do grants for younger caregivers who are caring for family members who got early onset dementias, and so then they can actually have respite care and things like that. So there's monies available. You just have to know how to find them.
And of course, you mentioned something that's a very special area, which is early onset dementia or early onset Alzheimer's, which is a very aggressive form of the disease. And usually, my understanding is the survival situation is very short, 6 months to a year. And we think of dementia as something, and not to be political, but what we see on the international stage with Joe Biden, who clearly is showing signs of dementia, couldn't find his way up the stage and stuff. But that is the more traditional form where people begin to show a series of symptoms, but they're not, completely out of the program yet, versus early onset Alzheimer's, which is a very devastating disease. And I think the average onset in that is between 40 and 45?
It can be. I mean,
Mm.
it's considered early onset, anything before 70. So generally
Mhm.
speaking, the average age is 65, when between 50 or 60 and 65 when it hits.
Yes.
For many people, like if you took it at Laura Rogan Miller Rogan, her mom got it at the age of, I believe it was 55, and was
Mhm.
gone within 3 years. So it goes very quickly. It's not it's a very progressive disease, kind of like ALS in that regard, because it
Yes.
just happens so fast.
I was at a networker a few days ago, and 80-year-old gentleman sitting next to me mentioned that he had lost his first wife due to ALS. And of course, that's a very rapidly moving and devastating disease, also known as the the baseball player's disease. It's a very, very sad situation. And our third question, what can people learn from your webcast on the USA Global TV and Radio Network? What do people hear about there?
Oh, thank you for that question. I try to bring in experts and caregivers, anyone who has lived experience or professional experience with dementia, to teach people how to take care of different aspects. So I have had people like Loretta Vaney on. She's the Lego lady. She teaches Lego serious play, but with her, it's a distraction and communication techniques using Legos, because there's no rules with Legos. And so you can use it to communicate with how somebody's feeling, to keep somebody from agitation. You can put that in their hands and allow them to create. Again, no rules, no structure. They can do whatever they like, and no one can tell them they're wrong, which happens a lot. Why people get upset, because everyone keeps correcting them. This gives you a freedom to just play. And so it's a wonderful tool. I've also had PK Bevel on. She's the inventor of the virtual dementia tour. And with that, she teaches family caregivers and professional caregivers what it feels like to have dementia. And it's a 15-minute tour. They put you in a space like an apartment, and they give you different, I shouldn't say commands, but they give you different instructions on just simple things like sitting down in a chair and tying your shoes, walking across the room, picking up coins off of your dresser, just simple things. But when you have the visor on, you get the achromatopsia that comes with dementia. So you're going to get the tunnel vision. You kind of see in black and white. It's very difficult to see, and it's just through a slit lens. You have headphones on that gives you a similar feeling of the tinnitus that is happening for somebody, let's say, with Alzheimer's disease. So it's very hard to process what someone's saying to you. They put in the gloves to make it difficult for you to feel, so that you understand what the nerve degeneration is like. And also, they put pads in your shoes. So again, it makes it difficult to feel the floor, which is why you might see dementia patients walking with shuffled footsteps, because they can't feel the floor, and that's their way of solving that problem. One of my friend's mothers has macular degeneration as well as dementia. She lives in her home, and it has cement steps outside it. And when she leaves her home, instead of holding the guardrail, she can't see, so she bends in half. Now she's 90 years old, and she touches her way with her hands because she can't feel it with her feet for each step. And it's terrifying to watch, because you think she's going to fall at any moment, and there's no way to really catch her because there's not enough space to have somebody there to catch her. So I mean, it's a lot of different things that can happen, because and if you have the compassion to understand how it feels, it makes it easier to cope with it.
Well, that is some really fascinating information, and I think very helpful to some of the many Americans who are facing these type of challenges with loved ones, unfortunately. And as we talked about, is hardly any family is completely saved from it, and just tends to be what type of resources are available and things like that. Now, how can our audience get more information about you, your book, and your webcasts?
Well, you can reach me on my website at tracycramperkins.com. You can also reach me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. My book is available in wide release, so you can find it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, Walmart, your favorite independent bookseller, and also your local library.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Tracy Cram-Perkins, for your wonderful information, and it's so helpful. It's so great to meet you.
The defense rests, Your Honor.
Nasty news about Democrat Virginia Lieutenant Governor candidate. While I've been happy Texas resident for many years, I still have a warm spot in my heart for my adoptive home state of Virginia. They are on the heels of a tough off-year race. The governor's race pits current Lieutenant Governor Winsome Earl Sears, a personal favorite of mine, against Abigail Spanberger, the Dem candidate. That race is very tight. Recently, I've become aware of the questionable pronouncements of the Democrat candidate for Virginia Lieutenant Governor, Ghazala Hashimi. A report by the Washington Free Beacon newsletter provided some interesting details. Part of her claim to fame is that she helped kill legislation that would allow parents to know if their child had identified as transgender at school. Following the Dem playbook, since the Dems have nothing to sell, she reportedly claims that the majority of people in her state are bigots for their positions on DEI, sexually explicit books in schools, and similar mainstream positions.
I'll allow it.
Good people, the university funding cuts that I am hearing about causes me heart palpitations. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled with the cuts. $1 billion in federal funds and grants to Cornell University and $790 million to Northwest University have been frozen. The White House confirmed due to reported civil rights violations. This, of course, tracks well-publicized funding suspensions at Columbia and other woke schools, including fellow Ivies, Penn, and Brown. My question is, with the massive wealth that these colleges have, and of course they're tax-free, why is the federal government sending this kind of money to these schools? I can understand supporting HBCUs and small colleges and especially public schools. That's not what we're talking about here, folks. So I do have some real concerns about how this all got started in the first place, and I'm sure hoping that this is corrected. And I don't care if it's taken away because of DEI or woke or whatever it is. I think this needs to be taken away because they shouldn't need this money. It should go to needed public causes, including keeping Social Security and Medicare from going broke.
Sustained.
FBI agent arrested at the airport trying to leave the USA. I like it when the good guys win. In this case, somehow it's fitting that an anti-Trump FBI agent, Jonathan Boomer, got arrested at New York's JFK airport as he tried to skip out of the USA. He has been charged with leaking confidential information. Reportedly, he copied and released over 100 confidential files. He was not in custody since he was out on $100,000 bail. Glad someone was paying attention and caught him before he could leave the U.S.
This session is adjourned.
Thanks for joining me for Saving America. If you have questions or comments, please find me on various social media sites. I'm Dr. David D. Schein, and I will see you next week.
Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.